So this week's discussion was given that trauma shapes the assumption you make about the world, how has your view of humanity shifted in this course? And thinking back on like just trauma and humanity, I think the biggest thing or the biggest takeaway kind of from this course is that trauma, it doesn't really discriminate on who you are, and Lewis kind of talks about that in his 2 chapters. But I mean, there's a million different kinds of trauma. It can range from very significant, like big things like fatal car accidents, to smaller trauma that you experience when you're younger that stays with you. But I think that we have all experienced our own trauma in our own way. But it also kind of makes you feel like a sense, in a way, kind of helplessness. And when you think about helping clients, like I did my internship at the Children's Advocacy Center, and there were some kids who, when they came in and you heard their trauma stories, you just kind of feel helpless in the sense of, for one, how can I help them overcome this? Because this is significant for their age. So what am I going to do to make a difference for them so they can overcome this moving forward? And then, will the work that I'm doing last? Obviously the trauma is going to stay with them to a certain extent. Like trauma, they're like scars that we have, and we can grow from them, but they're still there. But is what I'm doing really going to make a long-term difference in their life? So I think that it just kind of gives you a different outlook on humanity, and it just makes you be aware of it more, I guess. Lewis kind of talks about how his trauma was like an old familiar, and then moving into it, it was like something new that he didn't recognize. And I think that once you've gone through trauma and when you've gone through a significant grief, that you can recognize that in other people, and that can help you connect with them in some way. So I think everyone kind of shares that aspect in common. And then the next part was describe how your calling to be a therapist might influence your work in this area. And although I think that it's an amazing calling, I also think that we need to stay grounded and true to who we are as therapists, and whether that's by seeking guidance from a mentor or someone to help us work through this, or even going to see a therapist regularly, that is a huge thing that will help us and influence our work in this. Our ACU supervisor always encouraged us to, as clinicians, go to counseling so you understand the process and you understand what you're telling your clients, but also to help you work through some of the stuff that you're hearing and experiencing in there, so you can kind of learn how to separate that. And I really think that Yancey talks about that pain has a purpose and trauma has a purpose in our lives, and even though we might not be able to see it in that moment, we can move forward, and it's encouraging that there is hope and that there's a better future. So I think that there's that calling there for me to help others and help them understand that you can move past this. It's not going to be easy, it is going to be hard, but there is like a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can turn all this around. So that's how I think that it's influenced me.